Predictions of an apartment shortfall. Let's have a look. Good morning everyone, I'm Florian Heise and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I've got my morning stein of coffee and I thought we'd start the day by having a look at this article. This is quite an interesting one, and this is from the Financial Review, and they're predicting a shortfall in apartments in 2021. Okay, I just find this quite funny, to be honest. So let's have a look at this and then look at a few other things. So slumping numbers of new apartments in marketing means the country faces a shortage of apartments in about 18 months' time, when the current new supply and outstanding stock has been absorbed and there is yet no pipeline churning out new dwellings, JLL says. The total number of new apartments currently being marketed has dropped 72% from the national peak of 34,488 in the third quarter of 2017 to just 9,565, the Commercial Real Estate Agency's third quarter 2019 apartment marketing report shows. Okay, so let's have a look at a chart that I seem to be showing all the time, but I think it is very, very relevant, and that's this one here. Now he's referring to, the peak. The market has dropped from the national peak of 34,488 in the third quarter of 2017. So we can see here 2016-17. So we already had the fall off in foreign investment into our properties start there, and now it's sitting at 9,565. So is it coming off a boom to a more sustainable level? People are pushing to get those developments sold. I was at a function last night, and a development function, and I was talking to a developer. It was a small, some 3-story walk-ups, and the real estate agent who ran it, he did a fantastic job at just, having an event. Really pulled all the stops out. You had food, ice cream. I broke my keto diet, that's for sure. But I spoke to the developer, and a few things I find funny is he will actually go there and he'll save money by doing all the cleaning on site, and he'll work on it himself as well with his team. And you've got all these people dressed up, suits, ties. Even I had a pocket square, women dressed well. But the guy who was making the most money on it looked like he just walked off the street, didn't care at all. And I just thought that was quite interesting. And it spoke to me about how he got the property and how he built the buildings, and they were fine little walk-ups, no complexities to them. Because I was making mention of a lot of the destroyed confidence out there because of what's happening in Mascot, some of these other buildings, and he hadn't really been following the news, so he wasn't up to what was happening there. So I just wonder how widespread appreciation is of concerns of what's happening around the country. But that's probably the larger scale to what he was doing at. I just thought it was interesting. So let's have a look at a few things I want to talk about, because they're raising concerns in a drop in advertising. Because the reason I bring up this launch is, they're pulling out all stops to push these, fine, normal apartments, 3-story little townhouse things. But they had music there, they had DJs there, and this is the second event I've been to with this real estate and this developer working together to do a launch like this. It creates an event and it creates some buzz. And just 50 meters up the road, there's another development where friends of mine had invested in, and they're still waiting years later to sell all the apartments. It's interesting to see what the developer that will spend a bit of money creating some buzz compared to the developer that won't spend any money creating some buzz to push the product. And so the concerns that we're having a shortage, anecdotally I'm not seeing it, and I've looked at a few other things as well. We have a look here. This is a video where we looked at the decline in dwelling approvals. So, approvals dropped 21%. For apartments, it's like over 60% over a 3-year period in Queensland. So there was a huge boom, and there certainly was a decrease in it. But the thing is, are we just heading back when they're talking about, only 9,565? Are we just heading back to a trend? Because this data is just from the second quarter 2017. How far back did JLL go? Okay, so they're not giving us any other data. I would just make a guess on building approvals and on the amount of foreign investment, that maybe we're heading back to a trend or maybe below the trend because it's cooling off. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just what happens when an overheating market disappears or slows down. So this is a video I did about approvals, and I will link to that above. We also have this one here where I looked at just West End, the number of apartments, and I'll turn off the sound here, the number of apartments that are going up in West End and South Brisbane. They are tens of thousands of new apartments, and all in that suburb, and it's just changing the entire demographic. I mean, look at how many are in this building here. This is the old TAFE campus, Distanted TAFE. Look at that. And they're worried there will be a shortfall. And you've got to realize where our population growth is coming from, guys. The majority of it is coming from immigration. Now, this suburb here in Brisbane, they've got a serious problems with the schooling. Traffic is very difficult. They've got a whole lot of infrastructure issues here, and just all the empty shops. Well, we'll see how it goes. There's other parts where I was talking to a cafe owner, and what they've done is a bit further along Montague Road there in South Brisbane, they had removed all the offices and the old warehouses and factories and put apartments there. And the apartments were terrible for him because he wasn't getting any of the regular trade for lunches, for breakfast and coffees before you get to work. I know that area because we used to have our office there. We rented an office there at one stage, and it was just, traffic was a nightmare. It really was. So, I don't know if we should be basing these predictions of a shortfall in apartments just based on advertising data from 2017. Maybe I'm just being too cynical. Maybe the people I'm meeting and talking to, are just at a different point in the sector. I'm talking to developers or investors who are annoyed that they've that they're predicted, you'll get 30% a year, has dragged on for 2 years, and if it keeps going at this certain rate, it's going to be another 8 years. So the timing of this process will be slightly different in each market due to all having slightly different construction cycles. But by mid-2021, we expect all the major markets to either back in or be very close to a position of undersupply again, says Lee Warner, JLL's head of residential research for Australia. He has to be basing it more than just advertising data, don't they? I mean, LNP, the Liberal Party, has put a reduction or a cap on the immigration numbers. It's still tough for developers in the short term, and part of it is there is still residual stock in each of the markets that needs to be worked through. What that means is there's a lot of competition for developers out trying to sell off the plan, or even just launching a finished development. This is the thing actually I quite enjoyed, going there and seeing a completed development, everything done. Even the subbies were there at the event. I spoke to the guys who were putting the kitchen bench tops in. What was interesting was I was asking them about, there's calls now to ban all these engineered stones because of the potential for dust, and he just changed jobs from one manufacturer or one installer to another because there's less cutting on site, less dust. So these blokes are aware of it. They're aware of the risk, which is encouraging to see. And the fact that he said, yeah, they should ban this stuff. But it just shows you, who's cutting the corners. While dwelling values are surging, well, apparently they are. That's only based on one source of data. I mean, yesterday we looked at, properties in Australia 108, where the value was declining. People have purchased off the plan. It was 25% below. How can people be making these claims when we're seeing that? All the land around Melbourne, 20% drops. Okay. Melbourne values gained a 10-year record 2.3% in October, and Sydney jumped 1.7%. The recovery in established homes is not yet prompting a recovery in demand for off-the-plan dwellings, JLL figures for the September quarter show. I don't know who the hell would be stupid enough to buy off the plan. Really. I mean, come on, there's so many examples where people are losing money now off the plan. You've got the issues at Mascot, you've got the issues at other buildings, Opal Tower. You know, how many buildings are in the Triangle of Fale in Sydney that have got issues? You've got Zetland, you've got the Sugar Cube apartments, which still people aren't occupied. You've got the Johnston building, you know, in Brisbane with issues. There's so many buildings around the country with issues. I've got to update that construction map. So why would anyone even consider buying off the plan? I mean, maybe the issue here is that they're mistaking a lack in advertising for off-the-plan developments as people starting to realize that maybe there is, or consumers have lost confidence in that method of purchasing. They're not going to pre-purchase their apartments. So the recovery in existing property demand and prices is great for confidence in the broader market, Mr. Warner said. However, this is likely to level out a little over the next couple of quarters as more vendors are attracted back into the market. The recovery in investor demand is also likely to stay more muted than for owner-occupiers, and this remains an important source of demand for the new apartment market. While the pipeline of new apartments continues to trend down, there are some signs of rising activity. Official figures last week showed a 16% pickup in September of new approvals of apartments and townhouses, an indication of future construction. Okay, yes, I've got the figures here. I mean, I went through the dwelling approvals, and overall, it's down. It is down. It's dropped a lot. See, they're talking about a 16% lift up, but in the last 3 years since the boom, it's dropped 60% in Brisbane. Have a look at that video, guys, because he's latching onto one part of it and then extrapolating out from it. It doesn't scream much confidence. That needs to continue for a while for it to be a trend. And remember, approvals are just approvals. Okay, you can get your building approval, then you can sell the site with the approval, or you can sit on it and renew it again and again and again. Maybe people are taking advantage of, you know, a slowing down in building approvals. They get some cheaper consultant fees and get everything locked in. It could also be town planning changes that are coming that you want to lock your design in under an older town plan. That too. So Brisbane is likely to be the first East Coast city to experience an undersupply of apartments, having turned down earlier. Okay, really? That'll be interesting. That will be really interesting. I'll just jump back here to, you know, West End, guys, South Brisbane. Watch that video if you want to see all the apartments in this suburb, all the huge towers coming up. So, okay. But also, I mean, one thing, are they taking account of the potential for people to default? Are they taking account for the increased level of mortgage stress? What happens if we enter a recession? If people start losing their jobs? People are forced to sell? What will happen then? I don't think they're factoring that into this assumption. I get the sneaking suspicion this is all based on core logic and advertising data. Like the video yesterday about the worst market ever, forever, on memorable decades from REA. And it's all based on their own concern with agent listing fees, which I think is quite interesting. So Brisbane's supply peaked way back in 2016 and is more advanced in the process of absorbing residual stock, Mr. Warner said. Construction will be particularly low in 2020 and 2021. A tightening of the market is already evident in the rental market, where upward pressure on rents have already re-emerged. So there you go, guys. Construction will head down. So, I mean, frankly, I think construction sector, a lot of it's already in recession. Melbourne has suffered the mildest slowdown for 3 East Coast capitals, but apartments in marketing in the Victorian capital are down 2/3 from their peak in 2017 of 18,000 to 6,000. Melbourne's very strong population growth will help with consumption of stock, but construction has been very concentrated in and around the CBD, and there are some very large projects recently completed or soon to be completed that still have a large amount of stock to be absorbed first, he said. Sydney's apartment market is likely to take the longest time to reach undersupply, as the city's housing construction cycle was the last to peak. The number of apartments in marketing in the New South Wales capital has shrunk 80% from December 2017 to just 7,000. JLO's figures show. So there you go. What do you think, guys? What do you think? I'm I'm not going to make any long-term planning decisions based on what they're saying here on their advertising data. I think there's a much greater risk of the potential for a shortage being offset by people having to go default and more product returning back to the market. We're just seeing it at 108, the Australia building down in Melbourne. Let me know what you all think, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoy my content and want to help me produce more videos, I have a Patreon and a subscribe style where you can make a small monthly donation. I also have Amazon and other affiliate links where I receive a small commission for you shopping there. It doesn't cost you a cent. Great way to support the channel. Thank you all very much for your support, and have a great weekend, guys. Take care.